Okay, Kathy.
Okay, I think we're live. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening for the Lieutenant Governor Forum that VCDL-PAC is holding. This is the second in a three-part series. Last week we had the Attorney Generals. This week we're having Lieutenant Governor, and next week we are having the governor's candidates. Candidates that were properly filed for the primary, everybody was invited. So the folks that showed up are the ones that are here to answer your questions. I want to thank the candidates for their times. I know I know they're all over the state. As you can see, some are in their car, some are borrowing offices. So thank you so much for spending time with the VCDL membership, 2A advocates, and the Second Amendment grassroots here in the state. And I also want to thank the audience for joining us, and thank the VCDL staff that is here tonight. Pat Webb, the treasurer for VCDL and VCDL-PAC, who is instrumental in helping putting everything together, the questions, and social media director Ed Levine, who is running basically everything behind the scenes. So thank you, Ed, and of course, Phil Van Cleef, who has been a tremendous help with the questions and also just overall organization. I wanted to also mention that the Attorney General forum that we had last week, there were several hundred people that originally logged on to watch it. But right now there's over 1,300 that have watched it on the YouTube streaming channel. And so I want to let you know that people are dialing in after the fact. So once all three are up, it's going to be an extremely helpful tool when people are looking for who to vote for in that May 8th convention. And last time I made the mistake of speaking about the convention at the end, and I'm just going to quickly say right now, even though the deadline for many counties has passed to be a delegate for May 8th, there are still time for some counties to turn in their forms. So if you go to the RPV website, which is virginia.gop, there's a 2021 nominations schedule there. And that will be, there'll be a calendar, and on that calendar you find your county, and the form is universal. There's also a link there. So you go to your county, call, and look to see how you can get that form in. Most people are getting, are allowing to have it received through, we have two social media guys, allowing it to be received through email. So it's a very easy way to get the form in. The Democrats are having their primary on the first Tuesday in June. No, is it the second Tuesday, June 8th? So I think it's June 8th. So our process, so the Republicans' process is on May 8th. The Democrats is in June. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off with everybody doing 2 minutes of an introduction, and we're going to go by last name, and the questions are going to be asked, and everybody will get 1 minute to answer their questions. So we'll go to the next person. So this whole line of answers is not going to be the same order that it was for each question. So I'm going to invite Puneet Alwala to make his introduction for 2 minutes, and the timer will be behind Ed.
Great, Kathy, thank you. And all the members of the VCDL and folks who are watching, thank you for the opportunity to really talk about an important issue that divides our country from being a citizen or a subject. And that's the reason why Second Amendment is so important. And I can tell you with my personal experience, because one reason I got into this fight when last year they came after our Second Amendment rights, I wrote an article in Washington Times, and I wrote an article and I said it's very hard to oppress minorities when they're armed. That was the main gist of it. But at the same time, I've seen firsthand what happens to law-abiding citizens and minorities in India. In 1984, in a matter of hours, few thousand Sikhs were killed. And I saw that happen firsthand. That was my inspiration to be politically active. Same thing then when I came to the United States in 2001, when a Sikh gentleman was killed in Arizona. And when last year they came after our Second Amendment rights, I realized this state is going towards what you call socialism, and conditioning is happening. That's when I started talking to folks. I saw the King Ralph mandate that followed. Then we saw the looting and rioting that happened in Washington, D.C., in Northern Virginia, the boarding up of Tyson's Corner, and in Richmond and all over the other parts of the country. And somehow the Democrats found a way to justify that. And that's when I said, when you defund the police and when we dial 911, within the time before the police shows up, who is going to protect us, our family? Hence the reason I chose to say that Second Amendment is so important for us to protect our families, our way of life, and our constitutional right. That's so important. Folks, I want to be the next lieutenant governor because I am the margin of victory that's needed in Northern Virginia. Through my video messages, through my articles, I've reached out and showed that guns are important. They are a way of life, and they are part of our society, and they're part of the Second Amendment, which protects us, which also protects the First Amendment, which protects the Constitution. Hence the reason, folks, I'm honored to be in this platform today, and I'll share more details of what's important on Second Amendment. And most importantly, I have it here, and from my cold dead hands, you'll be ever be able to take that away from me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet. Next up is Lance Allen. You have 2 minutes.
Ed, is your
Can you
timer
hear me all
working
right?
now? Okay.
Go ahead, Lance.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Lance Allen. I'm running for the office of Lieutenant Governor. What's important to me and why? I'm tired of policies coming out of our capitals that make it seem like you can't trust Americans or that you can't trust Virginians, right? Joe Biden said not too long ago, essentially, that our rights were not absolute. And I'm here to say that as someone who served in the Air Force defending those rights, that Constitution for over 10 years, my rights are absolutely absolute. And I don't want to wait for conservatives to find their backbone anymore. I want people who will stand up. Let me give you an example. You can't call yourself a conservative and sponsor things like red flag laws. Maybe you call them something different, but House Bill 4031 was a red flag law. Why is that so dangerous? Because the same folks reporting you on Facebook as a racist, a terrorist, an extremist, those are the same folks who call and report you to the red flag tip line. And when they're done silence you, when they're done taking your firearms, what do? They come for your property. They come for your home. They come for your children. That's how dangerous this is. One of my opponents said in our last debate, well, that was a mistake and I've changed my mind. I don't have time for Republicans to find their backbone anymore. We need conservatives who will stand up and fight. My grandfather took me in when I was 6 years old after my father was murdered. Now, don't feel too bad for me. My mom probably wished she had done it. She was a victim of domestic violence, and my mom worked 3 jobs taking care of 4 children when minimum wage was less than $5 an hour. So my grandfather took me in because she struggled. Now, my grandfather, there was one thing that I learned from him. I like to say that he knew what child labor laws were. He just really didn't give a dang. And so we spent most of our evenings picking and planting onions and all of our mornings picking and planting onions. But you don't get rich farming. And so I moved straight from high school into the Air Force. I did 10 years there as an intelligence operator. And he used to tell me one thing: in all things that you do them with great care. I don't ask that politicians or Republicans or even Democrats do all things, but I ask in all the things that we ask you to do, you do them with the greatest of care. More important than the things I told you, I'm a father and I'm a husband of 3. It's a shame to wake up in a world, my children could wake up in a world where they don't have the same rights or same opportunities as I do. And that's not just because of 2020 and COVID. That's not just because of the Democrats. That's because we've allowed Republicans to get elected who negotiated away our rights. I'm looking forward to having a conversation on why the Second Amendment and the rest of my rights are so important tonight. I look forward to my conversation with everyone. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Okay, thanks, Lance. Next, we have Glenn Davis.
Well, thank you all so much for having this. I really appreciate the opportunity to have a forum around our Second Amendment rights. A lot of people on here are going to talk about what they want to do if you would like them. With me, you're going to hear a constant theme. It's not what I will do, it's what I have done and will continue to do. I've been on the Firearms Subcommittee the last 2 years. I'm the only one that's been there in 2019 and 2020 and 2021 when the Democrats have had the majority, taken these tough votes. I've been on the Firearms Subcommittee where we have 3 Republicans, 9 Democrats. It didn't matter whether it was the background check bill, the 1 gun a month bill, whether it was anything that came in front of us that went after our Second Amendment rights. I was there on the front lines, not just hitting the no button, but standing up and explaining why these are bad bills and why we need to protect our Second Amendment rights. And then when they flew out of the subcommittee, I would do it again in full committee. And when they came out of the full committee because the Democrats had way too many votes, I would do it again on the floor of the House of Delegates. This isn't something that it's me just talking about what I care about. You can actually go back and see that I've actually been standing up for this. And the reason why I have is I lost an uncle at 9 years of age to gun violence. It was a robbery at a convenience store he worked at that's a mile as a crow flies from where I live today. And at 9 years old, I didn't know much about the Constitution, but I understood that law enforcement officers, we love them, but they're not always there when that young lady's being abducted, the home invasion's going on, or that retail store is being robbed. And we have that constitutional and God-given right to protect ourselves and our families. And that's why I've always stood up for it. And if you want to see how much I've stood up for it, we just launched another page to our website. It's davis4lg.com/gun rights. Go check it out. And you'll see all the videos of me speaking in subcommittee and full committee and in front of organizations and giving praise to the VCDL after the January 2020 lobby day that they had that preserved our gun rights in so many ways that year. And I'm thankful for it. So please check that out, because I've taken these hard votes, one of the few up here that have, and you can know what you get from me. And it's a pivotal year. We need to get back to House of Delegates and all 3 statewide offices. And I know I can win. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Next up is Tim Hugo.
Hey, Kathy and Philip, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tim Hugo. For 10 years, I was the Majority Caucus chairman, fighting for the things that we believe in as conservatives, protecting the Second Amendment. I served 17 years in the Virginia House of Delegates. I represented Northern Virginia. During that time, I took the hard votes to protect the Second Amendment. If I look at your voting records, I have in 2019, I had 100 from the VCDL. I have an A rating from VCDL over the years that I've been there. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe the Second Amendment protects all the other amendments. And I took those votes. I took the vote to, we had gun rationing. I voted to repeal that. We had a restaurant ban where you couldn't walk in and protect yourself in a restaurant. I voted to repeal that. We had we made sure we had online classes. I voted for that. Every time there was gun legislation, Second Amendment legislation to protect our families, to protect our homes, to protect our communities, I voted for it. I have 17 years of that. And I did it, ladies and gentlemen, in a difficult area. It wasn't always easy, but you know what? It was the right thing to do. And I was glad to do it, and I was glad to support it. And I was honored to have the support of VCDL in my 2019 race. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate it. But y'all supported me, not because I'm a nice guy, not because of you liked me for some reason. You supported me because I supported the Second Amendment, because I stood up for the Second Amendment, because I wasn't afraid to fight. I wasn't afraid to take the vote. And I did it in Fairfax County. I did it in Prince William. And now I'm looking for the opportunity to protect the Second Amendment in all of Virginia and make sure that in Northern Virginia, which I represented for almost 2 decades, where we're getting killed in election time, I think I can help us win. I think I can help us win on other issues, but I definitely think I can help us win on protecting the Second Amendment, protecting our families, protecting our communities. Thank you for all the work you do in the Second Amendment. God bless you.
Thank you, Tim. For 2 minutes, next up we have Maeve Rigler. Go ahead, Maeve.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for inviting me here tonight to this very important forum, because the Socialist Democrats are really threatening our Second Amendment rights. My name is Maeve Rigler. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. Some of you are probably saying, well, who the heck is Maeve Rigler? Where the heck has she been? Okay, well, I am a native Virginian, born and raised in Fairfax County. And I'm an attorney, and I'm a business owner, and I'm a political outsider. And I think the Second Amendment is incredibly important. Look, I lived in a beautiful farm in the countryside of Virginia, and there wasn't a neighbor in sight to be seen, okay? And I can't imagine myself or anyone else being out there alone without a gun. So what we're having here is a real attack on our Second Amendment rights by the Socialist Democrats, and we've got to stop it. Look, last November, I was honored to be part of the Trump legal team in North Carolina. And it's there I learned the importance of voter integrity. And ever since, in my opinion, the Democrats stole our election in 2020, I have been waiting and expecting my opponents to forcefully stand up against voter fraud. But what I've heard are crickets, and we can't have crickets. That's why I got into this race. If we do not protect our elections from fraud, then all the other issues, including our beloved Second Amendment, will be for naught, because the Democrats will steamroll us in November. Look, this election is not about endorsements. It's not about who you know. It's not about how long you've been in office. It is about winning in November and beating the Democrats. It's very important. I know I'm emotional about this. I'm 100% Irish, And that's why I will fight for voter integrity. That's why I will fight to keep our Second Amendment rights. I will fight for the unborn. Maeve Rigler, running for Lieutenant Governor. I'm honored to be here tonight with you.
Thank you so much, Maeve. I want to apologize in advance. I'm trying to be as quick as I can if my dogs open their mouths. So I know that they barked while you were talking, so I apologize.
Starts with this too.
We're supposed to be sleeping now. I mean, I don't know what they're doing, but I wanted to give the next 2 minutes to last but certainly not least, Winsome Sears.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, VCDL, for having me on and for having this forum so that we get an opportunity to talk to everyone about our views on the gun control, et cetera, getting our gun rights back and all that good stuff. My name is Winsome Sears. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor, and I hope to secure your vote because, folks, we have to win again. You have seen what these Democrats have done. They have lost their minds. They have put forward every bill that they thought they could get through to take our guns from us. Well, I'm here to tell you, it ain't gonna happen with me. It is not my first rodeo. I know how to stay conservative once I'm elected, and my guns are my protection. My father came to this wonderful country at the height of the civil rights movement with only $1.75 in his pocket. He parlayed that by taking any job he could find into a career, put himself through school. He's comfortably retired now, has his guns, so you don't want to mess with him. We have our guns. You don't want to mess with us. And by the way, speaking of guns, we're not going to defund the police either, because while I'm waiting for the police to come, I am going to need my guns. My daughters have their guns. My husband, we are a gun family. And so I'm here to tell you, Second Amendment rights not going to be taken away when I'm in office. I want to say to you, I am all for, making sure the ballot box is sacrosanct, making sure we have parental school choice, all of the good things that my fellow opponents have said. We all pretty much want the same things. But folks, if you don't get in, none of it matters. And so here's what I'm saying to you. I was chair of Black Americans to re-elect President Trump. He said he needed Black voters to win. We went out and got Black voters in the 10 battleground states. I won my race as a Republican in a 60% Black district. And so I'm saying to you, Black voters are coming to the polls, Asian voters are coming, Latino voters, all of us are coming. We need to win them. Ask yourselves this question. Whom do you think the Democrats are hoping you don't send up? That would be me, because I'm a Marine, I am Black, I'm a woman, I am an immigrant, I'm a small business owner. They can't say anything to me, not at all. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, each question now, we're going to start with the same order that we had before, and then, like I said, next time we'll start with Lance. But the first question is going to go to Puneet, and the question is, are you a member of VCDL, and what other Second Amendment organizations do you belong to?
Well, I'm not the member of VCDL, and I have been a member of NRA, but I look forward to joining it. But it's more important that, are you a gun owner? Are you somebody who truly believes in Second Amendment, and you also someone who understands the importance of Second Amendment? My wife and I both do. She has a gun. In fact, most importantly, I bought her a gun there last Valentine's Day as a gift. So membership is important, but most important is belief. Are you a true believer in Second Amendment? And do you know the difference of owning a gun or what a Second Amendment is? It's as I said again, it's a difference between being a subject or a citizen. And the Second Amendment right makes sure that we will always remain citizens. And at the same time, it always makes sure that it'll protect us, it'll protect our First Amendment and our Constitution. So I believe I'm a proud believer of Second Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet. Do you need the question again, Lance? You're next.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. Absolutely. I am a member of VCDL. I think actions speak louder than words, and I think you need to know that commitment. I am a proud member of VCDL. I was at Lobby Day in 2020. I was at Lobby Day in 2021. I was there, boots on the ground, had a great day with a lot of great patriots, saw the buses come by. I am a member of NRA, the National Rifle Association. And like Tim and many of my other candidates, I think we all got A ratings at this point. So, what else can I tell you? 10 years in the Air Force. I'm a proud defender of our constitutional rights. I think that's probably the most pro 2A organization you can be a part of. And then lastly, I would just say, like Winsome and like Panit, we're a gun family. I think we did the last fundraiser for the 5th District not too long ago. And I built my wife an assault rifle and gave it to her as a present. So we are pro Second Amendment, shall not be infringed was not a suggestion. And there's no better way to show that than to take part in all of these groups. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lance. Next up, Glenn.
Sure. So I am a proud VCDL member. I am also a member of the NRA. Actually, I was a member of the NRA back when I was in high school. My old NRA membership number was BNV6846R. They changed it when I was in my late teens. The only reason I can remember that is because I probably wrote it 1,000 times on NRA sanctioned shooting competitions that I shot all throughout my high school years. But I'm proud to be a member of VCDL, but it even goes a little bit further than that. Standing with the organization. So my question becomes, where was all my colleagues at, on January 20th of 2020, arguably the biggest day we've had in the protection of our Second Amendment rights. And if you were standing there, in Richmond with all the VCDL members, I know the media says 20,000. I think it was more like 50 or 60 plus. But where was the social media? I've been looking at everyone's social media. I did social media that day. I did social media the next day. I wasn't waiting to see, could something go wrong? I knew our Second Amendment crowd was there, that we were respectful. We were there, but we were there to protect our Second Amendment rights. And I wasn't ashamed to actually post it while it was going on. I didn't have to wait till the next day to say I was there.
Thank you, Glenn. Next up, Tim Hugo.
Unmute, Tim.
Tim, you're on mute. Thanks.
Kathy, thank you. Much better there. How about that? Hey, no, I was trying to be low key. Didn't want to be respectful, but I do have on my NRA jacket here, my lifetime NRA jacket, because I am a lifetime member of the NRA that matches my A rating for 17 years. I am a member of VCDL, proud member of VCDL. I think I shot you a picture once. On the back of my car, I've got an NRA sticker and a VCDL sticker on the back of my car. So I show the flag and wave it proudly. And in fact, today you were asking about the Second Amendment. I got my concealed weapon permit laminated again because I just got my new renewal to protect it. And I got these. I'm a believer in the organizations, and I'm a believer in the Second Amendment, and I'm a believer of concealed weapons because I know what's happening. Because we've had people, as elected officials, you have people that come up against you, that try to do things to you, that threaten your family. And these are the things you've got to do to protect yourself. But it's not about elected officials. It's about all of us. So yes, I want to thank y'all for all y'all do at VCDL. I'm a proud member and will continue to be supported in any way possible. And I look forward to having a VCDL jacket that I can wear too. We need to get those. Get you guys get those soon.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, next up, Maeve.
Yes, thank you. That's my dog. Sorry about that. No, I am not a member of VCDL, but I'm basically going to be a member tonight. So just give me 5 minutes and I'll become a member. No, in all seriousness. Now, I am not, and my husband has been a member of the NRA since he was about 7 years old, and I married into a family of NRA experts. And I live on, as I told you, we have a farm, and I live with a 30-30, know how to use it, and it has quite a kick on it. So I am very much supportive of the Second Amendment. Look, I was a law clerk. The judge that I worked for was very good friends with Justice Scalia. When he wrote the Heller decision, that was absolutely dead spot on, okay? The Constitution does not allow restrictions on gun rights, including concealed carry. So that is what constitutional carry is all about. So I'm a super huge supporter of the Second Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Maeve. Winsome, 1 minute.
I am not a member, but I can tell you that I do have family members who are members of NRA. And in fact, there's a litmus test going on, but I can tell you that I am absolutely pro 2A. I have guns. My family has guns. We are not giving up our guns. In fact, I was the other day, it was about a year ago, actually, with the first Republican Speaker of the House. And we were out in an area that was really forlorn. And suddenly we saw a vehicle passing by that was on his property. He turned back to go and check out what was going on. There was no sheriff, no police nearby. And I can tell you that
I think Winsome.
stuff gone wrong with my phone.
Oh, there you go. You're back. Oh, she's gone. I think she'll probably dial back in. So let's go to the first question. She'll probably be logging on. She had about 10 seconds left there. So this first question is going to go to Lance. The questions are going to be pasted into the chat. So if you need to refer to them, there they are. So the next question, Lance, is in 2015. Oh, there's Winsome. Winsome, did you want to speak for another 10 seconds real quick?
I'll burn in and ask him what is so critical.
Winsome. Okay, we'll let her go. We'll just keep on with you, Lance. Sorry about that. Okay, so Lance, the question. In 2015, the governor enacted emergency regulations prohibiting concealed firearms in offices owned or occupied by executive branch agencies. In 2021, these no-gun policies were codified into law by the General Assembly. As we've seen at Virginia Tech and later the Virginia Beach government building, gun-free zones enable mass murderers to shoot and kill until a good guy with a gun shows up, whether it's a police officer or an everyday citizen. This happened twice in Texas at separate churches. Will you support legislation that would repeal the state government building gun ban, allowing the people the right of self-defense?
Yes, 100% yes. I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. Shall not be infringed was not a suggestion, right? So we don't negotiate it, right? It wasn't something that you can call it whatever you want. You can call it gun reform. You can slap, lipstick on a pig, but it doesn't change the fact that the Bill of Rights is very clear. My Second Amendment right shall not be infringed. And I believe that for every other right. It's the perfect example. So, I absolutely believe in repealing that law. I don't believe it does any good. And I would just say, I know that this is not related, but it's the same great example, right? I mean, you had gun-free zones, you had red flag laws, you had all of these kinds of things that have been pitched in Colorado and Indianapolis and Indiana and Arizona. And the problem is that they don't work. And I feel for those families and I feel for that struggle. But at the same time, I just want to clarify that what you're being pitched as a government solution doesn't work. It just infringes on the ability of law-abiding citizens to be able to protect those themselves and those around them. So yes, to answer your question.
Great, thank you, Lance. Next, Glenn.
Definitely. Look, I don't know what the Democrats don't realize about gun-free zones, but gun-free zones don't mean that all the bad guys that may mean to do harm decide to look at the sticker and say, oh my God, I can't bring this in. I always think about the case of, and I can't remember the lady's name that testified in front of Congress, who talked about how she went the night before. She went someplace where she had to leave her firearm in the car. She went to breakfast, I think it was, with her father. A gentleman walked in. It became an active shooter situation. She went to go pull her firearm out, and it wasn't in her purse. And she lost her father that day. That's how dangerous this thing is. So we need to repeal these things. I'm one that can talk about, I've been there. When I was on city council, we would have our city hall meetings. We were at the dais and people would walk in, and in many cases they were concealed carrying and we wouldn't know unless they said something. In other cases, they were open carrying. And in the city of Virginia Beach, we never once decided to make a change to that. We felt safe and secure when people were coming in front of us, regardless of open or concealed carrying. And that's the way it should be, so we all can protect ourselves.
Thank you, Glenn. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, Kathy, absolutely. I'd vote to repeal it. In fact, I would just tell you every day when I was in the General Assembly, I carried into my office. I carried into the House chamber because I wanted to protect myself too. It's also to protect other people. And I tell you, I think when I really felt the safest is when VCDL came to town, once a year, and I knew everybody was carrying, and I knew everybody was there to protect themselves, to protect me, and to protect everybody else. So I think it brings protection. So absolutely, I've had a history of carrying on the House floor in our building, and I think everybody else should have that opportunity to protect themselves. It's not just for the legislators, it's for everybody.
Thank you, Tim. Go ahead, Maeve.
Yes, hello. Of course, I would support the repeal of this law. Listen, I was the law clerk to a federal judge, as I mentioned, and he was obviously very good friends with Justice Scalia. And but my point is that it was the chief judge of the bankruptcy court in the 4th district. And bankruptcy is a very emotional thing. I mean, you had people that were losing their cars and losing their homes and losing their businesses. And we had wonderful marshals at the entrances and at the exits of the courthouse, but we weren't protected inside the courtroom. So I would have felt much more safe knowing that someone had concealed carry inside that courtroom to protect not only my wonderful judge, but all of us around the judge. So yes, I do support repeal of this law, for sure.
Thank you, Maeve. Next, Winsome.
So absolutely, I will vote to repeal that law, but let's not even stop there. Folks, when I get in, I'm going to take a look at all of the nonsense laws concerning guns and other matters that our Democratic opponents have put against us. And we're just going to get rid of those too. Why stop there? I'm talking about red flag laws. I'm talking about all these other laws that some of my opponents have voted for. And suddenly, of course, now we are changing. Listen, I understand what it is about these guns that we need to have our protection. I am from Jamaica, and I never saw people with guns, to use for protection. We always had to wait for the police or wait for somebody else who was more powerful. Not with me. Yesterday, I was with a woman, and I saw the gun in the back of her pants. And let me tell, in the back, she was so powerful looking to me. I said, there is nothing more powerful than a woman with a gun. And that my 2 daughters have their guns. We're not going to get rid of guns. We're going to repeal those laws you're talking about.
Thank you, Winsome. And Puneet?
I'll repeal anything which is against Second Amendment rights. Most importantly, I'll stand strong for that. And importantly, these gun-free zones are basically, I think, crime-free zones. That gives an invitation to people to do what they choose to do. And a person with a criminal mind or criminal intent will do what he needs to do. So this is all shenanigans of the Democrats to bamboozle us and the Republican Party. And we get taken in by that. It's very simple. There are certain things which are non-negotiable. Our Second Amendment, our Constitution, our First Amendment. Next question on anything. And we should go back and attack the Democrats on the kind of shenanigans they play on us. That's what I'll do.
Thank you, Puneet. The next question, we are starting with Glenn, and it will be pasted in the chat. In Virginia, we have constitutional open carry. Will you support constitutional carry legislation that would allow citizens to carry firearms openly or concealed at the individual's discretion for any reason except for the commission of a crime, while still allowing the individual the option of applying for a concealed handgun permit?
What's interesting is, like I said before, you don't have to ask me what I will do. You can look at what I have done. So I believe I've had the opportunity to vote 4 times for constitutional carry while I've been in the House of Delegates. And I voted in support of it all 4 times. Unfortunately, we have not got it out. We're not like Montana yet, but I would vote to support that. I think it's crazy that you can carry open today, but God forbid you put a jacket on, or the woman takes the firearm off her hip and puts it in her purse, and all of a sudden, now she's a felon. I would also argue that the whole brandishing of a weapon thing gets a little, kludgy a little bit when it comes to, that whole thing if you don't have the concealed carry permit. So yes, I believe that we should have constitutional carry in Virginia. I voted for it every time I had a chance, and I will continue voting for it.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Next is Tim. Tim, you're on mute again.
Kathy, I will absolutely vote for constitutional carry. I think as Glenn mentioned there, we want to be able to carry with a concealed weapon permit, but we should also be able to carry wherever we want. It's a constitutional right. And I think we want to make sure that men and women can have the opportunity to protect their family wherever they are. If they don't have a permit, that doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to protect themselves. You can use the permit if you want to go across borders, something like that. In Virginia, constitutional carry should be the law. We should vote for it, and I absolutely will.
Thank you, Tim. Next, Maeve.
Yes, of course I would support constitutional carry. It's my view that the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution does not allow restrictions on gun rights, okay, period, including the right to carry. And therein lies the name constitutional carry. As I mentioned before, the Heller decision was right spot on by Justice Scalia, and the Supreme Court, in his opinion, basically banned the DC's trying to ban handguns, found it unconstitutional. That is the correct law. That's the way it should be. And the bottom line about the Second Amendment is that it is for our self-defense.
Thank you, Maeve. Next, Winsome.
You know, I am all for that, but I want to go one better. Let's think about the First Amendment. The First Amendment says that our rights shall not be abridged when it concerns being able to practice our religion and free speech and et cetera, et cetera. Now, we don't have a permit that says we are allowed to do these things. We are just doing them without anyone allowing us to do. Free speech is free speech. There is not a piece of paper that says you are allowed to speak. And so I don't even know why we need a piece of paper that says we are allowed to carry. So that's where I'm going with that. Let's just get right to the heart of the matter. And not abridged means not abridged when it comes to as in all of the other rights as well.
Thank you, Winsome. Puneet?
Well, as I said, these are all shenanigans of the Democrats. I believe in constitutional rights. And the way they do the permits is, again, it's the government trying to get a control of who has a gun, who doesn't have a gun, what's about wearing a jacket and not wearing a jacket. And then if you wear a jacket and you have your gun hidden or concealed, you need a permit. It's all about overreach of the government. I simply stand for constitutional right, and let us be free. Let us live our life. And that's what individual liberty is all about. And that's how the founding fathers saw it. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet. And last is Lance.
Right. So first off, I just want to say that I believe, the Second Amendment is my permit. And I would also add that, when a fight breaks out, right, when something bad happens, you want people like me, like my opponents, you want conservatives on your side. Yes, I would absolutely support constitutional carry. I don't think the federal government does a good job of protecting our Second Amendment rights. And I like the fact that there are states out there who recognize those rights and are willing to stand up for it and say, hey, we recognize that right, and we want to recognize that with the rest of our sister states. So I'm absolutely for constitutional carry. And I would just also add, it's really hard to say that you want to take things to the next step when you haven't been in that fight. These are fights that we've been fighting for years in Virginia now. So it's important to take part in those organizations like VCDL and stand up, not just talk. You got to walk the walk and talk the talk, right? It can't just be one. So, where are we? Thanks.
Thank you, Lance. First up for the next question is Tim Hugo. Tim, red flag laws strip a citizen of not only his right to keep and bear arms, but also his right to due process and presumption of innocence in advance of a crime being committed. Unlike temporary detention orders, which Virginia has had for years, red flag laws do not provide help for someone having a mental health crisis. In the 2020 legislative session, a red flag bill, the Emergency Substantial Risk Order, was passed, and Governor Ralph Northam signed it into law. Will you support legislation to repeal the Emergency Substantial Risk Order that was signed into law?
Absolutely. I would not only vote for it, I'd co-sponsor that legislation to repeal it, because what they've done is taken away your rights. And what they've done is given people the opportunity to actually go after you and make an accusation against you without you having a due process. That bill that was introduced by liberal Democrats, left-wing Democrats from Northern Virginia, has no due process. I would absolutely vote to repeal it. I would support it. I would endorse it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Tim. Next is Maeve.
Yes, I would absolutely support the repeal of the red flag law and the emergency substantial risk order. Look, this is a slippery slope. This is what the Democrats like to do, right? They like to do a backdoor method to our Second Amendment rights. We can't have it. We have to stand up against it. Let's just think about this. If I have a neighbor and that neighbor knows I have a gun, and let's say that neighbor and I get into a dispute, and that neighbor goes to the very liberal Commonwealth attorney, okay, in Arlington, for example, who can't wait to go against a Republican with a gun. Well, you know what? It's like their word that I'm a risk to myself, their word. It's like no due process, no interview by me, and they go to court, they get a court order, take my guns. I then have to go to court, okay, to get my gun back. Listen, this is just not right. This is trampling on the presumption of innocence in this country, and it must be stopped.
Thank you, Maeve. Next, Winsome.
Absolutely, I would vote to repeal. And as I said before, this is the reason why we need to win, because the Democrats have gone giddy with power and they have thought up just about every gun law that they can think of. And they've gotten through. And I tell you, if they win again in November, they're going to push the rest of them through because they're going to really think that they have a mandate. And that's why I am telling you that none of this matters unless we win. I am the one to push us through, get us across the finish line. We must win.
Thank you, Winsome. Next, Puneet.
First thing is the red flag laws is more about the socialist mindset to snitch on your neighbor. That's one. It lacks the due process. We, as a gun owner, I want to have common sense gun laws if they really want one. But at the same time, there's no due process in the red flag law. So the idea is to basically have each of the neighbors snitch on the other and create issues and divisiveness in our families, in our communities, in our country. That's what the game plan is. This is all conditioning, folks. Hence the reason anything which the Democrat brings up is a no. Till you, as a gun owner, it's common sense. We can discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet. Next up, Lance.
Yeah, I think I heard one of my opponents say they would co-sponsor that legislation. I think they're confused. They already co-sponsored a piece of legislation like that called the Emergency Severe Threat Order. That came through from the Republican side. Why are these laws dangerous? Red flag laws are dangerous because they strip you of your rights, right? So I don't want to hear that you think you're going to answer yes to the question now. I want you to fight for my conservative values. And I see that has not been being done. Red flag laws are dangerous because they strip you of due process, right? Without any evidence of crime, if someone doesn't like you, like what you say, like what you stand for, like what you do, they can come and take your firearms, take away your rights. And my problem with that is when they're done with that, what won't they stop at, right? So maybe they come for your property, they come for your home, they come for your children now because you're a severe threat. I think we've got a huge problem here, and it's not just about repealing red flag laws. It's about standing for the Constitution. I want conservatives who will fight for my rights all day long. It's not just about winning. It's about participating in that fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. And last, Glenn.
So once again, I'm the only one that's ever taken a vote on red flag laws. I was there in 2020. I voted against it in subcommittee. In full committee, I spoke against it on the in committee and voted against it on the floor. And you can actually go to davisforlg.com/gun rights and actually see me on the speaking against this and explaining why this is a bad bill, why it takes due process, why it sets people up to not be able to defend themselves and their family and be able to utilize the Second Amendment. And let's take a second, just talk about, it has been mentioned twice now that, we have to have someone that can win. And I agree 100%. You know who the Democrats are scared of running against? The only one they haven't beat that you're looking at right now. Look, anyone that's run for office that you're staring at, they've beat. The only one that's ever run for office that has not lost to a Democrat is me, and that includes when they spent $1.1 million against me in 2019 in a district that Tim Kaine won by 10 points, Ig Gillespie lost by 5. I spent $250,000. We got overspent 4-1, and I still won because I know how to bring our conservative values and principles and win in tough districts.
Thank you, Glenn. The next question, we're going to start with Maeve. Maeve, in the 2020 legislative session, the General Assembly passed a law weakening Virginia's firearms preemption law. Local governments can now implement certain restrictions on carrying. This creates a dangerous patchwork of laws in which gun owners can easily and unintentionally run afoul of the law. Will you support repealing the changes the General Assembly made to the preemption law since 2020? And it's worth noting that only 5% of Virginia localities have even felt it necessary to pass their own local gun control.
I would support repeal of it. I think it's horrible. I think, look, this is kind of missing the issue. This is another way for the Socialist Democrats to kind of get through the back door, right? And, I don't think it's anything that we can do in terms of stopping them other than getting them out, okay? Because what the Socialist Democrats are doing are hurting our Second Amendment rights, and this is a perfect example of that. If I'm going from one locality to another and there are different laws and I'm a carrying gun owner, I have to worry about that. That's outrageous. I would definitely repeal this law. I would support it 1000% to repeal it.
Thank you, Maeve. Next, Winsome.
I know that you said only 5 localities have instituted this law, but I tell you what, that's 5 too many. Listen, our gun rights are not just what they're after. That's the first stop. Next comes the rest of the amendment, the rest of the Constitution, because you see now they have a free hand. And so we have got to stop these Democrats at every turn. It is not just the gun rights that they're after. So I'll definitely repeal, and I am going to make sure our constitutional rights are held whole.
Thank you, Winsome. Next, Puneet.
Kathy, I'll repeal anything which has to do anything that undermines our Second Amendment right. This is a socialist agenda, which I'm speaking and sharing before on the platform. I've come from a socialist country where Second Amendment is not even agreed to. Having a gun right is unheard of. And I believe that's the reason why you have so many prosecution and killings that takes place. I know it firsthand. And that's the reason I'm the best ambassador of getting this message into communities of the changing demographics of Northern Virginia or Richmond area and Virginia Beach. Hence the reason, folks, I understand what Second Amendment is. It keeps us as citizens, not as subjects. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet. Next, Lance.
Yeah, so I was part of the VCDL. I was part of Fauquier County 2A. I participated in several other 2A sanctuary counties, standing up those groups. I think it's first off, again, shall not be infringed was not a suggestion. Now we've got this patchwork of laws that, you're illegal on this side of the line and you're illegal on that side of the line. So I think there's absolutely a problem with it. And I think that we need people who have been in this fight from the beginning. I want people who have been part of that fight, not just people looking for another political office. And so absolutely, I would support that. And I would also just say that I would support the 2A movement, right? Because the 2A sanctuary movement is about recognizing that my rights are your rights, right? We're not negotiating them. And I would just argue, to my friends on the other side of the aisle, when they're done coming after my rights, they're going to come for yours too. So this isn't some kind of negotiation where I just want to protect what's mine. These are our rights. They were given to us. They were protected. They were given by God and protected by the Bill of Rights. They are absolutely absolute. And we shouldn't allow any politician or government to tell us otherwise.
Thank you, Lance. Next, Glenn.
Sure. So once again, this is a bill that came in front of me. I actually, on the floor of the House of Delegates, called this one of the worst bills because it created a patchwork of laws that just by crossing a city line, you could become a felon. Now, truth be told, there's only 2 of us on this call that have voted on this piece of legislation. Me, and I voted against it and think it's one of the worst things that the Democrats ever passed, and Winsome. In 2002, Winsome voted against Senate Bill 593 that actually would have stopped localities from having this type of authority. And she voted against almost every Republican in the House of Delegates to allow Democrats, actually to prevent localities from having this type of construct and prevent them from having this patchwork of laws. Thankfully, the other Republicans passed it over her head. And for decades, we didn't have to worry about this until the Democrats put it back in front of us in 2020. So as your Lieutenant Governor, I can assure you, I've already voted against it once, spoke against it, and it will go down when we get the majority.
Thank you, Glenn. And last on this question is Tim. Hugo.
Kathy, absolutely. Look, we don't need an encyclopedia to try to make sure we understand the patchwork of laws that they're trying to create in Virginia. And here's the worst thing. You mentioned it's 5 localities, but it's 5 of the biggest localities. So what we've done, they're already in the process of disenfranchising millions of Virginians. That has got to stop. It is a dangerous, slippery slope. We will not allow it. Again, thank you. I was there in 2003, all the way through 2019, A-rated, VCDL A-rated, because I fought on those issues. We will fight again together, VCDL, to stop these things and to unravel these things that the Democrats are doing. And I would just ask you to listen to what the Democrats say. They are blatant about it. They say point blank, give us the majority one more time and we'll finish the job. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to stick together. We got to fight in May. We got to fight in November. We've got to win. and we've got to unravel the danger that they are bringing to our communities, to our families, and to our homes.
Now, this Philip, let me just clarify one thing just so there's no confusion there. It's not 5 localities, it's 5%, which is 13 localities, still a tiny number compared to 190 localities in the state. We just wanted to clarify that for people that might get confused.
Okay, thank you, Phil. The next question, the first person to answer is going to be Winsome. Winsome, many firearm accessories and parts such as muzzle brakes, noise suppressors, foregrips, arm braces, etc., can make shooting more comfortable, accurate, and enjoyable. Suppressors can even protect the gun owner's hearing and minimize disturbing the neighborhood with unnecessarily loud noise. Yet the federal government restricts or heavily regulates these firearm accessories. Do you support these items being unregulated?
Wanted to make sure I unmuted. Yes, I do support that. It is not something that I think is necessary. Again, it's another overreach. And I do want to address what my opponent has said, since the gloves apparently are off. He might remember, Davis, that in 2018, you voted against SB 715, which would have been the first responders bill. In 2019, you voted against HB 4008. And so if you're going to talk about what I have done, please make sure that you're not calling the pot calling the kettle black. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Puneet.
Again, Kathy, I see all these shenanigans by the Democrats and the federal government and their overreach. As I've said over and over again, and I assure and attest and will sign, I'm a strong conservative who believes in Second Amendment right. Anything that hinders our Second Amendment rights or in any way curbs our ability to use our firearms in whatever capacity, I will not support that. It's an N-O in a bold and a capital letter.
Thank you, Puneet. Next, Lance.
Yeah, I think the answer to this is pretty simple. Look, I highly doubt criminals care about these kinds of things when they're out committing crimes. These laws don't stop criminals. They don't prevent crimes. They just hinder and overregulate what is, again, a constitutional right. So you can listen to my opponents talk about you're worse, no, you're worse, no, you're worse, no, you're worse, and all the different bills they voted against. Either our conservative values are important or they're not. Either you agree with Joe Biden that our rights are somehow negotiable and not absolute, or you don't. So happy to hear everyone continue arguing about the Second Amendment rights that they voted down. But at the end of the day, I would just say, if you didn't stand for the Second Amendment, if you're not actively participating in defending the Second Amendment, because that battle is happening right now, then I don't want you to have this office. I want someone who will stand and defend the Constitution, who will stand and defend the Bill of Rights. And again, I've said it before and I'll say it again all night. We cannot continue to wait for conservatives to somehow find their backbones.
Thank you, Lance. Next is Glenn.
Sure. So the important thing here is to have someone that understands what all these accessories are. So once again, you go to my website with Davis/gun rights. You'll see me speaking about everything from muzzle brakes to suppressors. I have both. You'll notice that when you look at the picture on my website. I've got the brace. Obviously, a brace allows you to be able to shoot more accurately and less chance of an accident. So we do. I mean, I can tell you the most interesting time I had was this last year explaining to Democrats what an 80% lower was. So you need someone that understands this. As far as this other stuff Winston brought up, I mean, it's great and wonderful. Yeah, we had a bill that actually some of the first responders, i.e. the EMTs, said, hey, this isn't good because we don't want to go into, some of these emergency situations and there's some bad guys there and we're helping keep them alive and they're going to grab the firearm off one of our hips. We've got, law enforcement in there with us, but that's a far cry from letting people get stuck in a patchwork of laws and actually get up an entrapment. So I think it's a far cry between the two. At least I had law enforcement people on me saying, Glenn, yeah, this is a good bill. I couldn't find a law enforcement person saying, yeah, we need to let localities have their own laws.
Thank you, Glenn. Next, Tim.
Yeah, Kathy, absolutely. Look, I shoot at Isaac Walton. I'm a member of Fairfax Rod and Gun. I take young people to shoot, try to educate them, to teach them, and women and new shooters and guys. And look, we have to have these accessories. Absolutely. Look, it's your right. And that's what it comes down to. It is your right, and it should be unabridged. And that's why, again, I repeat myself, but that's why I've voted consistently year after year after year. I've been in the fight with VCDL and the NRA every year. I did it with you for 17 years in a tough area in Northern Virginia. I won up there in Northern Virginia defending the Second Amendment. I look forward to taking that opportunity in November as your lieutenant governor candidate.
Thank you, Tim. And last is Maeve.
Yes, I will not support bans on suppressors, period. Look, the majority of crimes that are out there being committed are not done with suppressors. That's just the bottom line. This is another mantra of the Democrats, socialists trying to get at us one way or another. Look, I think the bottom line with suppressors is they help with the noise. They help, okay? That's what they help with the hearing. So we don't have problems with our hearing. Look, the right to bear arms includes the right to have accessories like suppressors. Thank you.
Thank you, Maeve. The first one up for the next question is, we're back to Puneet. Puneet, the term ghost guns has been thrown around a lot to scare people into supporting a ban on homemade firearms. The hype is that untraceable firearms are making it difficult to solve crime. The reality is that traces rarely solve crime or lead back to the criminal. At best, traces will lead back to the rightful gun owners of stolen firearms. Current federal and state law does not prohibit people from building their own firearms for lawful personal use. This is a historic national right and has a rich history in this state. Do people have the right to make their own guns as currently allowed under federal and state regulations?
Kathy, very good question. I would allow and promote and support any legislation which will allow people to further their ability to build guns, make guns, and do whatever they choose to do on their Second Amendment right. But there's another important thing is in play here. Why is Second Amendment so important right now? The Democratic Party is letting loose the criminals who are out there doing the havoc, and we'll see more of that. You know, I've spoken to deputy sheriff and other police officers who are so scared, their families are scared, because nowadays the gun laws are that the police are so tied with their hands at the back that they cannot take the action on people who are even transporting heroin, because they may have a little bit of marijuana, and that way they can transport drugs. At the same time, even, we cannot apprehend these criminals. So that's the reason. So families need those Second Amendment rights. As individual citizens, we need those rights. And as for the ghost guns, again, as I say, the shenanigans of the Democrats will never stop. You need a strong person who knows what it is to not have a gun and not have the Second Amendment right, which will also have an impact on the First Amendment right. So I'm your guy for that. Thank you.
Next up, Lance.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. Look, folks, what I would tell you is I spent 10 years in the Air Force defending the Constitution. I'm married to a wonderful woman who I just built a gun for. Ghost guns is just a scare tactic. It's just something to convince you that somehow you need, again, to let politicians negotiate your rights. And so I'm going to kind of let my wife speak for me here a little bit. My wife's got the ghost gun. If Joe and Nancy want to come for it, I promise you, I don't want to be on the wrong end of that stick with my wife. I don't think you want to either. Looking forward to having that conversation on a national level. No, I don't believe in deregulating or scaring people by using terms like ghost guns. It's allowed. Again, this is kind of a ridiculous conversation, but I'm going to repeat the mantra. Shall not be infringed was not a suggestion. And the minute that we begin to negotiate, the minute that we give that ground away, what we're doing is we're saying all of our rights are now somehow negotiable. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Next, Glenn.
Sure. So, it ranted it on the head. The Constitution doesn't say shall not be infringed as long as it's registered. I missed that part someplace that the Democrats think is in there. I love the term ghost guns. They take after the media. As long as you make the term sound scary, it's bad. Trying to explain 80% lowers to Democrats this last year was rather interesting. They were scared more at the term. Same thing. If you remember years ago when they went after the assault rifle ban, and then even as recently in Virginia as 2019, where you show them a hunting rifle that's used a large cartridge and it's a wooden stock, and no, that's fine. But God forbid you show them a polymer black weapon that's used the same round, and all of a sudden that's a bad gun. So the Democrats are operating out of emotion. They're operating out of fear. If it looks scary or sounds scary, they need to ban it. That's not how logical people work. And honestly, that's not how the Constitution was written.
Thank you, Glenn. Next up, Tim. You're muted.
You know, Kathy, you'd think after a while I would figure that out. But let me just say, Kathy, I'll absolutely support the VCDL position on this and protect it under the current law. Let me say what also I think is the most dangerous about this. If you look at what they're trying to do nationally, they're trying to change this by executive order. That is a danger. And again, that is a slippery slope. That is a threat to the Constitution. It's a threat to our rights. So because they can change this without going through the Congress, without going through the regular order of changing the law, if they can do it on this, they can do it on anything else. So again, I will support the VCDL position on this, absolutely. But I also want to speak out against executive orders that are coming against our constitutional rights. Real threat, that is a slippery slope, and we need to recognize it now and challenge it and fight back.
Thank you, Tim. Next up, Maeve.
Yes, I absolutely support people building their own guns. Listen, it's part of the Second Amendment. It's part of what keeps us free. It's part of our defense. It's part of what Heller said. It's part of what Justice Scalia said. Look, it's part of the Second Amendment. It does not allow restrictions on gun rights, period. So yes, I would support it. I'm all for people building their own guns.
Thank you, Maeve. And last, Winsome.
Yes, I would support. I mean, when you look at the Second Amendment, it doesn't say accept this and accept that and accept and accept and accept. It just says your rights shall not be infringed, and that's exactly what it means. Now, I think when you look at the bigger picture, this is the Democrats' MO. What they always want to do is to dictate to the rest of us how we are to live. They view the Constitution as a living, quote unquote, Constitution. And so that means it can be changed at any time. Well, folks, we're not a banana republic. We are not some third world country where you have a country going through a constitution almost every 5 or 2 years, depending on who is in office. And so we need to, as I said, look at the bigger picture, that they will not stop at just the gun issue, taking away our gun rights. It's the whole thing that they want to change.
Thank you, Winsome. The next question is starting with Lance. Lance, Virginia law generally prohibits the carrying of guns in both public and private K-12 schools, except for the police, including off-duty vacationing law enforcement officers from other states, and judges and Commonwealth's attorney with no firearms training. In 2021, the General Assembly added daycare and preschools to the list of gun-free killing zones. Even the draconian federal gun-free School Zone Act specifically exempts concealed handgun permit holders from its restrictions and allows permit holders to carry their firearms into classrooms. Will you support legislation to more closely conform school gun policy with federal standards by allowing concealed handgun permit holders to have a gun on their person while on school grounds?
Yes, I think, I want to be as authentic as I can here. Having my kids, in a public school, obviously I'm worried about their safety. And again, I say it's the same as the ban on, firearms in other localities. It doesn't stop criminals, right? But what it does do is it allows law-abiding citizens to be there, right? No one's going to fight harder for my family than I am. No one's going to fight harder for your family than you are. And so by enacting these laws, essentially what we're saying is, trust us, we've got this, even though we're not trained and we don't know what we're doing. And so I would absolutely support that legislation. And I think that we need to do a better job of not only protecting ourselves, but also protecting our children. Thank you. I couldn't see the timer. I think it started over, so I hope I didn't go over there.
Okay, thanks, Lance. Next up, Glenn.
Yeah, so this is another one of those bills I got very involved in, and I was asked to get involved in this legislation from various members of the Jewish community. That community has been under significant threat and acts of violence for a long time. And, many cases, daycares are on properties that are inside of or next to synagogues, and they were not going to be allowed to be able to have firearms or concealed carry there. and they felt this was a concern, a safety concern for them, and understandably so, as we look at a lot of the violence against certain communities, including the Jewish community. So I'd gotten involved in this, and I think it definitely went too far. Once again, it's already been said that gun-free zones just try to mean gun-free for the law-abiding citizen, but the person that is willing to do harm to others and themselves don't care what the sticker says or what the law says. And so we need to make sure we allow communities to protect themselves, especially communities of faith.
Thank you, Glenn. Next, Tim.
Yeah, Kathy, absolutely. Again, I would support the VCDL position. I think you've articulated it well within the questionnaire, but also in the way you laid it out here. But I think this goes back to your earlier question, the danger of creating a patchwork quilt of regulations and laws that somebody traps people, brings them into problem, makes criminals out of innocent law-abiding citizens. And that's what these laws do. And that's why we need to have uniformity, not just across Virginia, but across the America on this. So absolutely, I will support this as VCDL has requested, and I look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you, Tim. Next, Maeve.
Yes, I would support legislation that would conform gun policy with the federal standards. As you know, the federal law allows for exemptions, right? And the exemptions would be, and I would support legislation in the Commonwealth for concealed carry. You know, the hypothetical, I can just see myself in this situation, and I'm sure we all can ourselves. We're sitting there, we're waiting in the parking lot to pick up our child from school, and we have a concealed carry weapon, right? And it's all legal, we have a permit, etc. And I see a deranged person going into the school, and I say, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in my car and I can't do a thing. And then I hear a shot, and I'm like, what? I'm gonna sit there in my car while my child might be hurt? Are you kidding me? I support this legislation.
Thank you, Maeve. And next, Winston.
Yes, so I liken gun-free zones to, let's call it my house and my neighbor's house. My neighbor is gun-free. I am not. And so if I have a sign that says I have guns, but my neighbor doesn't, what do I think the robber or who else has nefarious activities in their minds will do? They're not going to come to me because I am not the path of least resistance. They're going to go to my neighbor because my neighbor is gun-free. Folks, I am not going to support any legislation that will take away our guns. Again, this is just one more thing and one more thing. And unfortunately, the Democrats have the media with them. And so the media is their bully pulpit, and their media keeps saying the same thing over and over again, trying to cause the rest of the country to go to the side of the Democrats and gun control. And so I'm saying, you don't have to worry about that with me, because I'm not afraid of the media. I have tackled enough of them. I will not support taking away our gun rights.
Thank you, Winsome. And last, Puneet.
Kathy, schools are sacred grounds, but if somebody is deranged and is walking in with a gun, if the teacher or anybody or a parent is there who has their guns with them and they can protect those kids, it's common sense. At the same time, the cancel cult will find all these different acronyms and all these different ways to confuse the public. I believe that the Second Amendment should be allowed wherever and everywhere we need to do it, because a criminal or deranged mind has no boundaries. They can act and will do, and their intentions cannot be stopped. They'll do and act on what they want to do. We should have law-abiding citizens, people who believe in Second Amendment, to be able to protect those vulnerable in that position. And I will make sure I carry that out and support that legislation all the time.
Thank you, Puneet. The next question, we're starting with Glenn. Glenn, South Carolina was the first state to pass a one handgun a month law and repealed that law in 2004. In 2012, Virginia also repealed its one handgun a month law. In 2015, the U.S. Court of Appeals struck down Washington, D.C.'s one handgun a month law. Then in 2020, the General Assembly passed and Governor Ralph Northam signed a bill reinstating the one handgun a month law. Will you work to repeal the one handgun a month law?
Yes, because this is a pretty costly piece of legislation to me. No, so seriously, I voted against the bill. I spoke against the bill. Once again, you can see it on my website. But when this bill passed, my wife called me and she said, Glenn, how many guns do we buy a year? And I said, well, we buy a few, honey, but not a dozen. And she said, well, by God, if the governor's going to restrict our constitutional rights, we're going to buy our one gun a month. So this got a little bit costly for me. But yes, that bill is a bad bill. It needs to be repealed. It does not protect anyone. It does not stop crimes. I'll tell you, the worst thing it does do is, like I mentioned before, I used to shoot competitively. When I shot pistol, we shot 9mm, 45, and it wasn't 22, 9mm, 45. We shot another caliber, and you need to buy 3 different handguns. So I'd have to wait 3 months to be able to buy the handguns to compete in an NRA sanctioned event that uses all 3 pistol calibers. So it's absurd. It didn't do any good last time it was in place, and it's not doing any good now. And it needs to be repealed because all it's doing is creating a hardship.
Great, thank you, Glenn. Next up, Tim.
Kathy, absolutely. And I was there in 2012. I voted to repeal gun rationing. The Democrats and the liberals and the leftists, they came after me and I said, no, we're voting for this. It's the right thing to do. You don't get rationed how many cars you buy. You can buy more than 1 car a month. You can buy more than anything else you want a month. Why is this limited? Why is a constitutional right being limited? It's being limited because for the Democrats, it's a slippery slope. It's where they start now and then it'll be next. If you can do 1 gun a month, they'll come back and make it 1 gun a year. Trust me, that's what they will do. That's what they will come after. It's wrong. We've got to repeal what the Democrats have done. But I got to say again, I was there with VCDL in 2012. I'll be with you there again.
Thank you, Tim. Next, Maeve.
Yes, I would repeal this 1 month of law. Listen, if I want to buy 10 guns a month, I should be able to buy 10 guns a month. But, here it is. I mean, this is another Democratic way of getting it back at us in a socialist agenda. Listen, this, as you mentioned, that we had it and it was repealed in 2012. And in the last 8 years, Virginia has been considered one of the safest places in the country to live. So that kind of is proof in the pudding. This is nothing but a bureaucratic way of gaining more control by the Democrats. And let us not forget, in 2015, in DC, that similar law was struck down and found unconstitutional. So I think we have precedent there. Yes, I would support getting rid of it.
Thank you, Maeve. Next, Winsome.
Yes, I do support repealing, and it's what I said originally when we first started this conversation, that we didn't just need to look at the red flag laws, we needed to look at all of the gun laws that the Democrats have put in place since they got the majority, because we need to get rid of all of them. We don't need to just look at one thing. So absolutely, I'm in favor of repealing that.
Thank you, Winsome. Next, Puneet.
Kathy, I'll repeal it, but I'll tell you, all this quota system, if people are smart enough, they realize these quota comes from socialist nations. Or you can have one of this or one of that. And as my friend Tim said, they'll first come after one gun a month, there'll be 1 gun a year. This is all quota. We don't want any quotas. We are a free enterprising society. Leave us alone. Let us follow what we believe in. And most importantly, I have to share, with the attacks on the Asian American and the minority communities growing every day, thanks to the democratic, divisive, racist policies on imposing critical race theory on our kids and racial balancing. We should hold them accountable. And as I have done, I've asked Secretary Carney to resign on imposing critical race theory, because guess what? When you impose hate, you're going to have all these hate mongers coming out and shooting us. We need to find a way to protect ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet. And last, Lance.
I would absolutely support repealing of this legislation. It's funny, one of my opponents said that the Democrats were chasing him around in 2012. I guess they caught up to him in 2019 when he decided to change his mind and negotiate on the Second Amendment. Look, either these things are important to us or not. I've heard a lot of fancy speech tonight, right? But what I want conservatives with a backbone. One funny story I'll lament real quickly is, for Christmas, I bought everyone in my family a firearm, including my 10-year-old son. I bought him his first hunting rifle. And I will just say that We found a way to get everybody a firearm for Christmas. I'm pretty sure the criminals will find a way to get as many guns as they want whenever they want. These laws don't do anything but harm law-abiding citizens. They're just more bureaucratic overregulation. Thank you.
Thanks, Lance. So the last question, we have enough time for one more question, and then we're going to give everybody 1 minute to summarize. And this last question is actually kind of a combination of two, because we had two questions on here. And one was, what does the Second Amendment mean to you? But then the next question was, Article 1, Section 13 of Virginia's Constitution reads that a well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people trained to arms is the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state. Therefore, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, that standing armies in time of peace should be avoided as dangerous to liberty, and that in all cases, the military should be under strict subordination to and governed by the civil power. So what does this mean to you, and what does the Second Amendment mean to you? And we're going to start with Tim.
Kathy, the Democrats think that the Second Amendment is about hunting. The Second Amendment is about protecting all of our rights. It's about protecting our homes. It's about protecting our free speech. It's about protecting due process. It's about protecting our country and Virginia. So absolutely, the Second Amendment is it's up there on the wall protecting everything else that we believe in. So I believe that what we have here is the foundational element. The Second Amendment and the First Amendment go hand in hand. One protects the other. And ladies and gentlemen, if we protect the Second Amendment, we protect the First Amendment. And when we do that, we protect all of our other rights. So don't let the Democrats say it's just about hunting. The Second Amendment protects your Constitution, and it protects your constitutional rights. It protects your right to liberty. It protects your right to freedom, and it protects everything about us and our families.
Right, Tim. And next up, Maeve.
Yes, hello, thank you. The Second Amendment is very precious to me. It's the right to keep and bear arms. It's critical in our society. It's critical to be safe. It's critical in our self-defense. We must always remember that it is a constitutional right. As Justice Scalia said, this is not something that can be taken away from us by the liberal socialist Democrats. This is one of our fundamental rights, the right to self-defense. I go back to being on a farm all by myself at night and alone, not being able to see a neighbor anywhere. I want to make sure that I have the right to have a gun and know how to use it. So that is extremely important to all of us for our safety, for our children, for our country. Thank you.
Did you?
Kathy, you're muted.
Yeah, Kathy may have dropped off, so
No,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm
Oh, there you
muted.
go. Okay.
I'm so worried about my dogs barking that I mute in between everybody's answers. So I apologize, Winston. Go ahead.
So the Second Amendment to me means liberty. As I had said previously, if I am waiting for the police to come, it's going to take some time for them to come. And so I'm going to need an opportunity to protect myself, and that is my gun. I have daughters. My daughters have their concealed carry, and they know how to use their guns, and I don't have to worry about them. When I'm home alone, I need to know that I'm protected, that I am ready at all times to protect my family, even if my husband isn't there. And so I just know that the Second Amendment is freedom. And this freedom, I'm telling you, under attack. It's not just the Second Amendment that the Democrats are after. They're after the whole Constitution. The part about liberty and the pursuit of happiness, it means nothing to them. They determine what happiness looks like because of their tolerance issues. They start defining our words. They determine what liberty looks like. Liberty is what they say it is. And that's really what they're after. They tell us how to live. They tell us how to educate our children. They tell us where they can be educated. They close our business. They close our schools. They do all these things because it's about control. And so that's why the Second Amendment to me is very important. Why I'm not getting rid of my guns and the rest of my family isn't either.
Okay, thanks, Winsome. And next is Puneet. And this is the question, what does the Second Amendment mean to you?
Kathy, this is so important because as a minority, as someone who has seen firsthand what happens to minorities in India, where you're targeted, you're killed. I've seen people right across my eyes in the home, which was across our home, was looted, burnt. And if they had their Second Amendment rights and they had their guns, they would be able to protect themselves and safeguard themselves. But this is more than that. Folks, what we have seen when they tell the police to stand down while they're justifying looting and rioting, that only happens in banana republics. Folks, the next thing they're coming to is to our homes. And if we don't have Second Amendment, we can't do anything to protect ourselves. But I'll go even further. When they demoralize our police and they're neutralizing our police and they're also neutering our police, and they're doing this is called conditioning. For the next 10 years, they're going to be doing this, and then this police will become a machinery controlled by the federal government to come after our Second Amendment rights. Folks, this is all part of the conditioning which the Democrats and the Socialist Democrats are doing to American people. Folks, I know what can happen and what will happen. Hence the reason I joined in this fight. The criminals are running free. Today, the people who are illegals have more rights.
Okay, that's your time. Thanks, Puneet. Next, Lance.
Yeah, so first off, I just want to say that you've heard me attack some of my opponents on the issues. I'll never go negative, but I will always hit you on the issue. And here's why, because it is so important. I served for 10 years in the Air Force, intelligence operations, counterterrorism, and homeland defense. What does the Second Amendment mean to me? It means watching the people I care about go onto some battlefield and die because they believe so strongly in our rights and our liberties and our freedoms. Go to that family, go to that soldier, and tell them that you negotiated away the rights of American citizens, and ask them what you let them fight for, what you let them die for. This isn't just some mythical thing that we talk about in closed doors committees. I'm so sorry. These are things that people are dying for on our behalf. It is extremely important to me. My grandfather used to say, I don't ask you to do all things, but in all things you do, I ask you to do them with great care. Our rights are one of those things. I don't ask you to do it all I don't ask you to do everything, but I ask you in everything that you do it with the utmost care. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. And Glenn, let's finish it up with this question.
Sure. So I had to actually educate one of my graphics designers on this yesterday. They put up the Davis-Earl G / gun rights up on my website, and I went to it and they had a picture of a hunter at the top of it. I'm like, okay, you really don't get this, do you? Hunting has nothing to do with gun rights. And so for me, it's two things. First, it is our check against tyranny. Look, Penn and Teller are awesome. If you haven't seen the video, to go Google Penn and Teller Second Amendment. It's a great thing where they talk about that well-placed comma. That comma means a great deal because it's because that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms should not be infringed. Look, if you ever want to see what happens in nations that tyranny starts to come down from the government, look at Germany, look at Cuba. First thing they did was take away take away people's firearms. The second thing it means to me, and I started out this meeting talking about I lost an uncle to gun violence who didn't have his firearm on him at the time, is the right also to protect ourselves and our families. And we have a God-given right, and thank God the Constitution followed up with that right.
Thank you, Glenn. We're going to go to 1 minute closings, and please feel free to list your website or how folks can get in touch with you. And we're going to start with Maeve. This is the 1 minute closing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be with you here tonight. My name is Maeve Rigler. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. If we do not protect our elections from election fraud, then all of the other issues that are so near and dear to us, like the Second Amendment, will be for naught because the Democrats will clean us up in November. Look, we have to have a candidate for Lieutenant Governor that will stand up for Second Amendment rights. We have to have a candidate for lieutenant governor who will speak out against voter fraud. We need a candidate for lieutenant governor who will not buckle under the pressure of the Democrats. I will fight for you. I will fight for conservatives in Virginia. I will fight to keep your Second Amendment rights. I am Maeve Rigler, running for lieutenant governor. Please check out my website, maeveforvirginia.com. It has been a true honor.
Thank you, Maeve. Next up, Winsome. Now you're muted, Winsome. There you go.
Yes. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight and to talk about our gun rights. But more importantly, we also want to make sure that we talk about the whole Constitution, because folks, if our gun rights are at stake, the rest of the Constitution is right behind it, because these Democrats are absolutely wanting to control our lives. You can see that from all of the laws that they have passed. It's always about control. They know what's best for us. We are the children. And by the way, the laws are for us and not for them, because you'll notice that from time to time, you do find them being hypocritical, where they have guns themselves that nobody knew about. And so, or they have hired security. And so I'm saying to you, we must win. We know that we need new voters to win as Republicans. I have won those new voters. We don't have to water down our message. We can win again. And if we don't win, then the Democrats are going to cement their victory. And so we must ask ourselves.
Thank you, Winsome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Winsome. Puneet, 1 minute summary.
Thank you all for having this great forum. It's so important. You know, in my faith, we wear one of the things is the kirpan, which is the sword. It's an equivalent to Second Amendment. It means its righteousness, its ability to protect your community and your family. I'm going to stand strong on Second Amendment anytime and all the time. And most importantly, I want to work with VCDL and the NRA to expand the message of why guns are important. We should have them introduced in our schools and have a sports and make it not people being scared, because all the people who come from socialist countries know what it is to be without a gun and what the police only the ones who have the gun. Our folk, it's important for us to message, and I'm the messenger who's getting into these communities and telling them by my video messages, by my articles, that it's harder to oppress minorities who are armed. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, and let's win for Virginia and for our great nation.
Thank you, Puneet. Next up, Lance.
Thank you. My grandfather used to tell me the story of an Irishman. The Irishman died. He went to heaven. He met St. Peter. He said, "Will you let me in?" St. Peter said, "Sure. Show me your scars." The Irishman said, "I don't have any." And St. Peter said, "What a shame. Was there nothing in your life worth fighting for?" We have an opportunity for real change in Virginia. We have an opportunity for conservatives who will stand up for our values and our principles, who believe that our rights are absolutely absolute. I would offer to you that you have an opportunity to help send that nominee forward. If they're not in the fight, if they're not part of VCDL, if they haven't been on the front lines with you, if they put up legislation that you know infringes upon your rights, don't send them up. We have an opportunity for real change in Richmond, for real change in Virginia. And the only way that we do that is by sending strong conservatives with a voice to Richmond. I'm going to ask for your support on May the 8th. You can find me online at lanceforva.com. You can find me on Facebook at Lance Allen for Lieutenant Governor. I want to thank you for hosting this, VCDL. You guys are amazing. And I want to thank all of my opponents for participating. I've enjoyed our discussions tonight.
Thank you, Lance. Next up is Glenn.
Well, thank you so much for having this forum. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you today. And, you know, I'll just reiterate what I've said. You don't have to worry about what I will do when you elect me. You know what I'll do, because you can go to my website at davisforlg.com/gunrights and you'll see my votes. You'll see where I'm not just a legislator that hits the red or green button to help protect our gun rights. I'm the one that gets up and gets, you know, passionate about protecting those gun rights, because it's not just enough for us to sit there and try to protect them as Republicans, but we need to bring more people in and make sure that they understand how important these gun rights are. And you don't do that by being meek, and you don't do that by only talking tough on forums like this and being meek out there in public. You do it by being the person you are in around conservatives, just like you are out in public. I'm also not going to be someone that's going to tell you, look, I will repeal these bad bills, when that person was also the one that voted to protect those bad bills when they were in office. Look, the people are the same. As my mom always said, if you want to know what people are due, look what they've done in the past. I'm also the one that can win. I'm the only one up here that's never lost to a Democrat, and I'd love to continue fighting beside every one of us.
Thank you, Glenn. And last but not least, Tim Hugo.
Kathy, thank you, and thank you to VCDL. Look, I've been in the fight for 17 years. For 17 years, I was defender of the Constitution, the defender of the Second Amendment. I have a lifetime A rating from the NRA. I have an A rating from VCDL. I have 100 in 2019 from VCDL because I was there fighting with you day after day after day. There's a reason why, because I believe the Second Amendment protects the constitutional rights of every citizen in every family. And ladies and gentlemen, we want to talk about not only have you been in the fight, can you win? There's a reason why leading conservatives like Congressman Griffin, Congressman Ben Cline, Dick Black, other leaders from the Second Amendment right are endorsing us because they see Corey Stewart and others. They see a conservative that knows how to win. They see a conservative that knows how to protect the Second Amendment and win in Northern Virginia where we are getting beat regularly. I've won in Northern Virginia for almost 2 decades. As a conservative, I will fight to protect your constitutional amendment. I will win in November, and we will repeal the bills that the Democrats have foisted upon our families. God bless you. God bless VCDL, and thank you all for leading the fight.
Thank you so much, Tim. I'm just going to say a couple closing remarks, and then I'm going to let Phil have the last word. But I wanted to thank the candidates. One of the great things about being involved in politics and the PAC is meeting all of the candidates. And I have met all of you, and I know how hard you are working, and I know how precious your time is. So thank you so much for being here this evening. And I can't believe I was so remiss in the beginning that I didn't do my shameless plug for money. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew you could contribute to the VCDL-PAC. I always say we don't have billionaires in our back pocket, and we don't have to raise billions, but we do have to compete. 99% of the money that the PAC raises is used strictly on the candidates. So there's very little overhead in our PAC. So the money goes directly to the candidates. They get endorsed in the general election. And if you go to the VCDL website and go to contribute, the PAC is the first selection. So please help out if you can. We'll take even the reoccurring debits is the best way. $5 a month can really add up, and it doesn't break your pocketbook all at once. So we would love to have your donation. And thank you again, everyone. And thank you for everybody viewing. The VCDL members are the most educated gun owners in the state. And we have really enjoyed putting on not just last week's forum, this week's forum, and then next Wednesday for the governor. So please attend that one too, and share this with your friends. Share the VCDL YouTube link with your friends. Let them watch and learn. And thank you so much. And I wanted to give Phil the last word.
Yeah, I think again, the last 4 years has been a real reminder to all of us of the importance of the lieutenant governor position, the attorney general position. And of course, we knew about the governor, but boy, even there, we're reminded of the power that can be misused that they have in their hands that we hadn't thought much about till it was misused. That's when you start to notice. And the lieutenant governor has got his finger on a very important button that can break a tie, that can be the difference between freedom and slavery, as far as I'm concerned. And so I will say I've enjoyed this immensely. All of you are great, great candidates. I enjoyed the passion, and there was certainly a lot of passion in there. People that really felt the importance of this right and protecting it and realize what's on the line. And it's going to be tough for the people deciding because, all of you are good. I see there's big pluses in each column for various things for all of you. So I'm glad you're out there. I appreciate your patriotism and stepping forward to be a part of this fight. I hope that we can turn this ship around and go back towards liberty and sail away from the communist world. Thank you very much for coming out. I appreciate Kathy and the PAC pulling this together. Like anything else, it takes a lot of effort to even pull something like this together. And Kathy and the PAC have done a great job on this, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Phil. Have a great evening, everyone, and we'll see you
Thank
next
you.
week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.